你们相信祝福吗？现在我们来做个测验，请在脑中试着将摩天轮向右转，再向左转。向左，向右，向左，向右。这张火车行进图也可以依照你的意志改变前后方向，请试着用意念去控制它。你看见了吗？我们的意念悄悄地塑形这个世界，这便是祝福的原理。
我叫李若男，6年前曾经触犯了可怕的禁忌。
就是在上面，你带它下来。
后坏在哪里？
如果一直想着怪物的话，怪物就会住到你的脑袋里面去哦。
不要想，不要想，不要想，不要想。
如果可以，我真的希望你不是我的小孩。
那是诅咒，我觉得我开始相信了。
爸爸，我在这里，我母亲也来，走，我们帮助我不是一个好妈妈。
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the latest episode of Fresh Cuts. This is Mike, and joining me, as always, it's Mr. Venom. What's up, Venom? How are you?
Greetings and salutations, curse bearers. I'm doing pretty well. Mike, how the hell are you doing?
Isn't life just one big curse anyway?
Well,
Do
I
we
mean,
need
since
multiple curses on
since
top
March
of
of
it?
2020, yeah.
Oh, man. All right. Also joining us, it's Don and Ellie. What's up, Don? How are you?
Yeah, what's going on? Always great to be here.
Cool.
Don always says it's great to be here. I wonder if the listeners think I don't want to be here because I never say that.
Well, I would hope you want to be here because you've been here since the beginning of it. So.
I'm gonna start my greetings with, instead of glad to be here, hey, how you doing, folks? I'm forced to be here. How you doing?
Still here.
Mike has me on a short chain.
God damn it! Another day, another week, another fresh cuts. What the fuck am I doing with my life?
Really? What the hell? What are we doing with ourselves?
All right. So this week we are doing a movie on it's actually playing on Netflix right now, or streaming on Netflix, called Incantation. It's a Taiwanese movie. Some reviews have billed it as like the scariest Taiwanese movie. I don't know.
The only thing I can chime in real fast is that it's the highest grossing horror film in Taiwan's history.
Okay, that's interesting. I mean, that gives it some validity then, because I was trying to think of like what other ones there are.
Yeah, it is legitimately the highest grossing film in Taiwan history. Or I should say native Taiwan film. I don't know what the foreign market is. You know, I mean, for like what they would consider foreign, but in terms of like domestically created Taiwanese horror films, that it is the highest grossing film in history.
Okay, cool. All right, and this one, I'll say it was like a half recommendation. Half kind of was in the plans to cover, because if you notice, like our past couple episodes releasing, like one episode was released way later, so we kind of had two come out, and kind of in between those episodes releasing, was it I can't remember if it was Tim Davis or someone else that like had asked us if he had asked if we had planned on doing it, because I think he watched it and had stuff to say, so he was interested. And I think by the time we posted that, we were actually discussing the possibility of covering it just because we knew we had a 1 week gap until we go back to the theaters, and this one looked interesting enough to want to cover.
Yeah,
so it kind of all came into place.
Yeah, I think it was one of those cases where every time I try to want to like shift the focus back to Shudder, it's like they give us 2 or 3 crap in a row. So I didn't want to do that third one because they ended up releasing another one last week, Good Madam or something.
Oh, yeah.
I think Good Madam was the last one released, and it was like, okay, I kind of want to go back to Shudder because they're doing new ones every week, but then they give us like 2 or 3 crap ones in a row, so it's like I don't want to do the third one. So this was kind of like the main attraction that was otherwise available at the moment.
Yeah, there is. I guess on some good Shudder news is, I think there's like at least like 2 or 3 movies that are coming to Shudder in August that I'm actually like looking forward to. Like when they hit, it won't be a surprise. Sort of like we knew The Sadness was eventually coming once it got announced. So, and I know one of them in August is currently screening at Fantasia. So like there's actually a couple movies with buzz that are coming to Shudder next month. So hopefully that'll turn the fortunes around of Shudder's. I guess we can call them Shudder releases, I guess technically, but yeah. So we'll more on future episodes later, but yeah. So Incantation, synopsis off IMDb. 6 years ago, I was about to say Lil. Ronan was cursed after breaking a religious taboo. Now she must protect her daughter from the consequences of her actions. Pretty short and sweet for like a nearly 2-hour movie, but that's okay because, better a shorter synopsis than one that gives away too much. So with that, I'll kick it over to Venom for general thoughts on Incantation.
All right, folks. Anyone who knows me knows that I love found footage. I love Asian cinema. I love movies about curses or cults. And I love demonic possession movies. And not to say that this is a demonic possession movie, but there are elements of it in here. So on paper, I should absolutely love this movie, right? Well, folks, sadly, I do not love this movie. I did enjoy it. I like it, but I have multiple issues with it. Where do we start? This is the least looking found footage movie of any found footage movie I've ever seen. Like, they're using some of the highest quality cameras ever. So it really, at times, looks like a full production movie. Yes, there's characters in the movie that are actually holding the camera, but, without any kind of grain to the image, without any kind of, video defects or dropouts, just random shit like that. It just takes that found footage away from it. Yes, we're looking through the POV of a character in the movie, so by default it makes it found footage. And then you've got the documentary style scenes where it's almost like interview scenes with the camera just pointing at one character while they speak. Mostly it's our main character, Ronan, of course. So it's just one of those things that this movie almost feels too polished. Now, that might not be a problem for some people. Some people might love that this is a found footage movie that looks like it had a $10 million budget. Not necessarily, but, I'm exaggerating. What else? Mike mentioned the runtime, 2 hours. Almost 2 hours. I'm sorry, folks. Almost 2 hour found footage movie is a little unnecessary to me. Earlier this year, I said that a 2 hour slasher is unnecessary. And now I'm starting to understand that found footage is another one of those film styles that I just don't want to spend 2 hours plus in that world, that level of immersion, especially when I start to lose that immersion because everything is so polished and it looks so pretty and all the effects look great and all the locales look awesome. You know what I mean? I hope I'm getting my point across. It just doesn't look as cheap as a found footage. Like, none of this footage that we're watching seems like it is found footage. There is a video in the movie, the tunnel video, let's call it, that actually does have that found footage feel to it. But the rest of the movie, it's barely found footage. So it's a minor gripe ultimately. It's not like it's going to bring down the rating of the film, but I like my found footage. I'm a found footage purist. I don't mind shaky cam. I like shaky cam, actually. I know that's not how human vision works. It's not like the world is bouncing around when we're running, but something about it always works for me. Again, it adds that level of immersion, that level of mystery of what am I looking at? I can't quite tell what I'm looking at. I'm one of those people that actually likes that aspect of found footage. So another reason I'm not the biggest fan of this movie is that it feels like an American movie, an American horror movie, in the sense that we have characters making stupid decisions after getting multiple warnings. This really comes off like any city folk going into the country type American horror film. And that's upsetting because this is Asian cinema. I expect so much more, especially from something like this that was, big budget, a big release in Taiwan. As Don mentioned, the highest grossing movie, domestically in Taiwan. I mean, there's a lot writing on this movie, and ultimately between the runtime, the pacing in some scenes, like I'm not going to say that any whole scenes in this movie were throwaway scenes, not at all. For the most part, I was fairly engaged throughout, but a lot of the scenes will kind of just teeter off for a while and like freeze on something for a few extra seconds than it really needs to be. Now, obviously, if you shave a lot of that stuff off, I mean, what are you really losing? Like a minute or two of runtime on the film? So, I mean, I would like to see some stuff cut out of here. 151 is just a little too long for a found footage movie. Now, the positives, my friends, the acting in this movie is fucking stellar. I love our main character, Ronan. I'm not even going to attempt to pronounce the actress's name, but I think she has such a spectacular performance here. The entire gamut of emotions. She's happy to get her daughter back. She's terrified of something from her past. She's terrified of people taking her child away because she has mental health issues. Obviously, some form of PTSD. We don't really find out what. We do find out from a psychiatrist early in the film, or some kind of medical, doctor, basically mentioning the event of the past. And are you sure you're okay? Are you sure you're okay to raise your daughter? Blah, 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 blah. The little girl, Dodo, I believe Huang Sin Ting is the name of the actress. Another great performance. She is awesome. She's very standoffish at first, as any child would be meeting her mother for the first time, or at least the first time in many, many years. And then as the film progresses, the way that her moods change, where she's not instantly a happy child, but she is happy to be out of the orphanage and in a real home. Obviously, she's still nervous about it, but, what are you going to do? The score in this film is wonderful, an amazing score. I had a really great time with it. Very off-putting, like it kind of weirded me out at times. Like some of the, especially like some of the chanting. There's a piece of music early in the film where we get a nice kind of ethereal music sting playing, and then it slowly out of nowhere fades into chanting, and it'll be the chanting that we'll hear throughout the entire film. That I thought was stellar. So again, great score, great performances. Some decent gore, not really that bloody a film by any stretch of the imagination. We get some good head smashes and things like that, but this definitely isn't the film for gore hounds by any stretch. And then the ending, man, the ending left me very sour, in the sense that I understood what was happening. I understood, I can't really get into it here, but I understand the events of that final scene. I understand what happens to Ronan in that final scene, but it's left so ambiguous and obviously it's a found footage movie. And with found footage movies, once the last person holding a camera is dispatched or dies or whatever, then the movie's over. That's usually how it works with found footage movies. We all, famously remember The Devil Inside ending so incredibly drastically after the car accident. So, Yeah, so the ending for this, it kind of left me a little sour. I do think that this is a fairly scary movie. It's got some good tension throughout, some very tense scenes early on in the first and second acts. I love the events of the first night after Dodo comes home with her mother, with Ronan. It's funny because I was talking about the paranormal activity syndrome, where whenever we have a haunted house movie, usually on night number one, either nothing happens or something very minor happens, and then it escalates as it goes. Nope. This movie was like, fuck it, we're not wasting time. Fucking night number one, some of the most fucked up shit occurs to this, poor little girl and mother in their tiny little apartment. So overall, I enjoyed the film. I did. I'm a little disappointed in both the runtime, some of the pacing, and the ending just left me a little sour because I love this story. I absolutely love this story. I love the story of the cult. I love the story of the curse, all of it. But like I said, there's just little elements here and there that left me a little sour. I still would rate this film fairly high for its technical aspects and the fact that I was on board for it for like an hour and 40 minutes of its hour and 51-minute runtime. But yeah, and I would recommend this movie. I enjoyed it enough that I think found footage fans should check it out. Asian cinema fans should check it out. Definitely not going to be in my top 10 by any stretch, but a movie that I highly regard for its technical aspects and its performances on screen. I just really wish they nailed that ending. That's it for me.
All right. Let's go on over to Dawn. What did you think of Incantation?
Yeah, I'm kind of in agreement, although I side a little bit higher than Venom does with this one. I do agree. The pacing of this one is a little off. 151 for this kind of story is just absolutely unnecessary. It's kind of difficult just because I think there's so many elements at play here that I almost don't even want this to be found footage, and I think that's kind of the crux of this one is that it doesn't necessarily need to be, and by being found footage, it kind of shoots itself a little in the foot because a lot of what goes on here is dictated by the mandate of the format, like his insistence on stupid characters. Like the final half hour of this film is completely unnecessary because who in their right mind in that amount of danger is going to be worrying about fiddling with a fucking camera? And I mean, that's just like, the founding principles of the format just kind of dictate that this kind of a setup has no purpose being found footage. And it's kind of infuriating because a lot of the film reminds me of a Thai film from last year called The Medium, which I utterly loved. It was one of my favorite films. I actually ranked it just behind The Sadness as my favorite film of the year. And I mean, yes, I know Sadness came out for a lot of folks this year, but I caught it last year. So for me, Medium was number 2 for the year. But a lot of this film reminds me of that, and it's kind of it comes up short in a lot of areas, but I do like a lot of what it does. I do like the central setup. I do like a lot of the imagery and the cult's curse kind of aspect that goes on here. Some great set pieces. I love as much as it seems like a contradiction, I do like the final third of this. I do like a lot of the return to the village and find out what's going on kind of a thing. The central action itself is fantastic, and it really has like a lot of great occult imagery and is bizarre mysticism that a lot of people aren't necessarily going to be familiar with because it focuses on this weird offshoot of Buddhism or I think it is Buddhism, right? Because
yeah, they talk about the Mother Buddha.
Right. Okay. So yeah, it is a slight offshoot of Buddhism that you don't necessarily get with a lot of Western cinema. So it kind of adds this strange, just sort of esoteric occult angle that really plays well, and it has a lot to like about it. But yeah, being found footage, it almost looks like like Venom said, it's way too polished to be found footage, and it doesn't necessarily need to be. And I think that's its central problem is that with all the different angles that's going on here, because the central setup is so convoluted and there is so much, there's so many complex storylines going on that by focusing on it being found footage essentially just kind of shoots itself in the foot. So it kind of just falters because of that. But in general, yeah, it's enjoyable. Not necessarily my favorite film of the year. I actually kind of, weirdly enough, I actually do kind of like another Thai horror film called The Funeral, which I don't know when that one's coming out for you folks yet. I've already seen it. I really like it. I like that one more than this one, actually. So, yeah. Real briefly on that one, it's about a woman who returns to her family home for the funeral of her grandfather, and weird occurrences start happening. That one there, I don't know when it's coming out, so just keep that one as a keep one for your radar kind of a deal. But yeah, this one it kind of stumbles just a little bit just based on the early promotions, but I still enjoyed it. I appear to be a little higher on it than Venom because I don't find those issues as crippling. They're still on my end as well, so. Yeah, not a top 10 of the year, not, a must watch, but you could do worse. And yeah, there's a few issues holding it down, but I still really enjoyed it. So I guess that's all for me.
Okay. So as far as I go, I'm pretty much right aligned with Venom. I did like the movie. I didn't love it. There were parts towards like the beginning where I felt like I was set up to where I might end up loving it because I did like where it was going. I also kind of agree with Dawn that it didn't really need to be a found footage movie. Nope. If anything, I wish they would have just settled for like kind of like the hybrid that we've seen some movies do lately, where it's not based in being found footage, but you can easily like work found footage sequences in. Like there's like some sequences where they're exploring certain places. Like you could easily just make those found footage because it would make sense. Like, oh, we want to specifically document what we're doing, on this part. But a lot, like even though the movie's billed as found footage, there's so many segments or just scenes where the camera gets mounted out of convenience where it looks like it's just being shot. Like there was no reason to try to just say, oh, it's a found footage movie. I do think the running time's a little long for the story we have here. It does kind of feel like it meanders in spots with the story once kind of like the main setup's happening. I also agree with Venom that the conclusion kind of left me like lukewarm. Like I understood what they were saying with like how everything kind of wraps up and comes full circle, but the other part of me was like, did I really need almost 2 hours to get to this conclusion? Like it felt like if that's what the reveal or I guess was, we could have had this be like a 90-minute, maybe even like a 100-minute movie, but it just felt like a little long in the tooth for where we ended up. On the positive side, though, I think there's plenty of creepy stuff going on. There's plenty of sequences that are done very well. The craft is definitely there for a horror movie, and there's a couple moments that even got me, despite the fact that like as horror movie watchers, it felt like you could see certain times when you were being set up for like a kind of jump scare or something. Even with that known, it still got me in a couple places. Just well done. I love one thing I love about movies that deal with curses versus just like straight up like religious doctrine is a lot of movies with curses. They tend to just throw in like random creepy stuff for no rhyme or reason, like as part of like the lore of a curse. And because a lot of these are like fictional, it's like there's really no rules, right? It's not like we're following like Catholicism where like everything kind of has to line up with like the imagery and what you would find in actual religious texts. Some of these curse movies, it can they can make up a completely fictional religion or any type of practice, and it kind of just reveals things as it goes along that the viewer would have no idea what was going on. Now they do kind of reference Buddha in this a little bit, but it didn't feel like it was like any type of like 100% alignment with Buddhism or anything.
No, they were calling her Buddha Mother the whole movie, so I don't think it was the Buddha, but some variation of it maybe.
Yeah, exactly. So there might have been like, some like loose ties to it. Maybe for people that are more familiar, maybe they would watch this and say, oh yeah, this, that, and the other thing. But for me, it was pretty like new as far as like the trip.
Okay, wait, hold on. Okay, so wait, I can do something here. So I was looking this up, and it says Kevin Cove explained that the Buddha Mother, hand gestures, chants, symbols, and everything associated with the religion in the film are all fictitious. Much of the budget was spent on the design and production of the props, especially the large statue of the Buddha Mother.
Mm-hmm. Well, that would make sense, yeah.
Yeah.
Did you read, cool. Don, by the way, did you read that this movie was loosely based on a true story? I found something.
I'm just coming to that right now.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah, so, where is that? Okay, there it is. Okay. The movie is inspired by an incident in Gushan District, Kaohsiung in 2005. A family of 6 had claimed that they were possessed by various Chinese folk religion deities and accused each other of being possessed by demons masquerading as deities. They burned each other with incense, hit each other with sticks and spirit tablets, and splashed feces and urine on each other in an attempt to expel the demons. In the end, they singled out the eldest daughter and attacked her until she died of her injuries. The 5 remaining members of her family were subsequently charged with the offense of abandoning a helpless person, resulting in the person's death. The case was considered one of mass hysteria.
Nice.
Yeah, sounds like it. Yeah. Okay.
So I do want to point out, though, that that information is read directly from Wikipedia, so usual Wikipedia rules apply. So,
I actually saw a YouTube video where somebody said that they had either heard or read an interview with the director, and that he was the one who said the movie is loosely based on a true event. So, thank you, Don, for clearing that up. That's awesome.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I mean, like I said, that was all read directly from Wikipedia, so usual Wikipedia rules apply. But yeah, in accordance with what you were saying, yeah, that is what it says about that
awesome.
That real life story background.
Nice. All right, Mike, go ahead.
Yeah, the only other thing, because a lot of what I had to say, actually, Venom, you hit on like almost. Like if I don't have a bullet point list in front of me, but if I did, you pretty much hit most of them. The only other thing I would add for general thoughts is another kind of plot device they use in this is multiple timelines. So if you combine that with the found footage and everything else going on, it can be jarring at times, because like it will say, like with the subtitles, like, oh, however much time ago. So it does try to tip you off, but it felt like through the course of the movie, there's a couple times when like you're trying to figure out the timeline as far as, okay, are we back in the before or now? Or what?
I figured out that every scene where Ronan was wearing a hat, a baseball cap, that was the past.
Nice. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, ultimately, this is a creative and interesting way to make a movie about, like, I guess, saying how far would a mother go to get her daughter back, and it's a combination of like probably the love she has for the daughter mixed in with some guilt from past events. So that kind of like drives the motivation of our main character. But other than that, yeah, I would say good movie, falls short of being like very good or great, but it had definitely potential, and there's a lot of good stuff in here. I just don't know by the end of it if people are going to think it was like worth where it ended up in its conclusion. So that's it for general thoughts.
It's funny because as we sit here and talk about it, it's actually the rating I have for it is actually going up a little bit, because I'm remembering more and more about the film and the whole thing with the narration, with Ronan basically narrating the entire movie, and it just dawned on me. I mean, it dawned on me last night when the movie ended, but I just remembered the whole reason why she's talking directly into the camera. I'm starting to realize why this actually was a found footage movie, and it has to do with the curse. think of Blumhouse's Truth or Dare. That's all I'll say about that. Anything else we want to talk about before we get into our not very long walkthrough?
No, I mean, Mike was right. I mean, a lot of this doesn't necessarily need to be found footage. I mean, you could have shown like just a couple of scenes as found footage, but yeah, a lot of the stuff. I mean, him saying like, you know, they're just standing the cameras on like a shelf just to record themselves. Like some of the, you know, the instances with Dodo in the house when she's there. Like a lot of that doesn't necessarily need to be found footage. So yeah, I mean, you know. Just like piggybacking off what he said, you know, him and I saying the same thing but different ways, I guess. Just, yeah, I think my biggest thing with it is that it just doesn't necessarily need to be found footage, but yeah, for some reason it is. I mean, I understand why, because, truth or dare, but.
Yeah, exactly. But it's a bad analogy because it's a terrible movie, and this movie is
that's
not
kind
terrible.
Yeah, that's.
But the
that's
only
the thing,
reason I bring that up is because I think I understand why this movie is found footage now. Like, I fully understand now why it's found footage. And it's actually kind of a sly little thing if you're not paying attention to the last bit of narration in the film. But we'll get into that in the spoiler section. But yeah, Mike, anything else you want to say before we jump in?
I think I'm okay. Let me think. I would say I did think the opening of the movie was kind of a cool way to get viewers like invested in the whole curse aspect of it. Like that is kind of an interesting way to use it. It kind of made me think of I had right before we were recording, I was like, oh, it reminded me of like a specific found footage movie, the way it started, but now I can't think of it. But I want to say there are some techniques in here that I did recognize from like past movies, and I do kind of like when, you know, anything from a specific genre kind of shows that, you know, whoever's making it, director or writer or a combination of both, do have knowledge of that subgenre, like the past entries, and kind of like take techniques and mold them in, but they don't rely on those as a crutch for the movie, but they do bring elements of that. So I will give it credit for doing that as well.
Definitely. Yeah, and I'm usually not a big fan of narration, but I understand that the narration in this movie had a purpose, which we'll get into in the spoiler section. But yeah, I'm starting, the more I literally, over the last couple of minutes, my rating for the movie has gone up because, like I said, it just dawned on me why this movie's found footage and why it needed to be found footage. But we'll get into that here in a little bit. So that's your final stuff. I can't speak English today. That is your final spoiler warning, folks. We are about to go into our walkthrough of Incantation. It's going to be a quickie. I'm not going to go over every single set piece because there's a lot of really cool, tense set pieces in here. On top of the fact that it's an almost 2-hour movie that, unfortunately, I only had the time to watch once this weekend. So bear with me with my walkthrough. All right, so our movie opens up and we see a young woman in front of a video camera. She introduces herself as Ronan, and she's basically imploring the viewers of the video to memorize an insignia and a chant that's an incantation throughout the film. And multiple times throughout the film, she'll actually ask the audience, the people watching the movie, she'll actually ask them, okay, let's go ahead and do the chant again right now. And if you don't want to do it out loud, you can just do it in your head. That's fine. Seems kind of silly at first when the movie starts, but like I said, once we get to the end, it all makes sense. So like I said, she is looking to lift a curse that she acquired 6 years ago. She has a 6-year-old daughter named Dodo. And basically there was an event that happened 6 years earlier, just before Dodo's death, that makes Ronan believe that she and Dodo are cursed. So throughout the intro, she's talking about the insignia and the incantation and how they're interspersed frequently throughout the, I already mentioned how, throughout the film, she will actually ask people to say the chant. So we go on from there. And this is the part that I was talking about in the non-spoiler section with the song. The song, this opening song that's playing while she's narrating is so fucking haunting. And then when she mentions the chanting, the song the chanting starts swelling up in the score. And it's just incredibly creepy. It really, really sets a great tone for the film. I mean, because we're not in any place creepy. We're literally just in a woman's apartment and she's looking into her video camera. But somehow the music just makes you know that something incredibly ominous is about to happen. So kudos there. So like I said, 6 years earlier, Ronan and her boyfriend Dom and Dom's cousin Yuen, they ended up breaking a religious taboo while documenting a ritual for their internet channel. They have a YouTube channel. They are ghost hunters. And God damn it, the name of their stupid YouTube channel is Ghostbusters. Yes, so original, folks, isn't it? It's amazing. Maybe they didn't get Ghostbusters in Taiwan yet. I don't know. But yeah, there it is. Ghostbusters. Every single time they said it in the movie, I laughed my ass off. I don't know if they were unaware of the irony, or maybe they just are big fans of the movie, of the franchise, so they called their ghost hunting adventure Ghostbusters, but whatever. So like I said, they went to a remote village in part of the Chen clan. Don and Yuen are actually family members of this village. They basically they have to go back every 20 years to perform a ritual, a mandatory ritual that all family members must partake in. So we'll put that aside for now. Let's talk about Ronan getting her daughter back. Basically, after some psychological evaluations, Ronan is deemed credible enough to be a parent and to have her daughter back. Basically, the story was that a few years ago, I don't think they ever tell us in the movie how long it's been, if it was right after Dodo's birth or years later, but basically we find out that she dropped off Dodo at an orphanage. They call it a foster home in the movie, but it is an orphanage. And she just disappears. She never comes back to pick up her daughter. But of course, she had some kind of traumatic event from her past that happened 6 years ago during this ritual, which we'll obviously go over here in a little bit. Now, at the start of the ritual, the elder of the clan asks all the new members, the two guys and Ronan, to write down their names on a piece of parchment paper. That they then take the name and they burn it in a pot. And what they're basically doing is they're symbolically giving their name to the Mother Buddha. And who is the Mother Buddha? According to an elder, a monk that they actually speak to in the film, the Buddha Mother is a malevolent entity. And if you submit your name with the incantation, it means you agree to carry the curse. I'm not going to get too much more into that because that might be a little bit of a spoiler for some other events in the film. So like I said, Mike was talking about how we go back and forth in time. That's why I'm going to be like a little disjointed with the walkthrough, because we're back and forth. We're in present day, and then we're back to 6 years earlier in the village, in the Chen clan village, excuse me. So let's see. So after Ronan gets her daughter back, they go home, and it's their first night at home. And, the little girl Dodo is a little standoffish. It's her first day in a new place. But she definitely does seem receptive. She smiles periodically. She definitely is happy that her mother is back in her life. But obviously, this is a mother that she hasn't been familiar with for years. So, it's a weird kind of touchy situation. There's definitely a balancing act there. You don't want to be too pushy with the little kid, but at the same time, you don't want to give them too much space and, to the point where they don't think they're being parented. So I know that's a touchy subject right there, but yeah. And during that first night, the shit hits the fan, my friends. This movie does not have Paranormal Activity syndrome, where it literally takes multiple days before anything happens and it's a big build up to this giant climax. No, my friends, very first night, we're already getting pounding on the walls, voices in the halls, a disappearing Dodo. Literally, at one point, the mother thinks she hears something in the house. Ronan goes looking around the house, and then when she comes back to Dodo's room, Dodo is gone. And earlier in the scene, too, Dodo complained about the baddie. Basically, some invisible, malevolent force that was kind of scaring her in the room. Ronan, placated her and kind of escorted the baddie out of the house. Obviously, at this point, I think we all know the baddie is Mother Buddha, or some demonic affiliation of Mother Buddha, if you will. And what we see is we see Dodo holding hands with some invisible creature or person, and she's being led out of the house. And she's basically outside, just kind of out in front of her house, not really sure what she's doing. Ronan finally figures out that Dodo is missing, goes frantically looking for her, and then does find her outside. She ends up bringing her back into the house, but as soon as they get back into the house, little Dodo literally floats up in the air. Her eyes go white, they glaze over white, and she just starts screaming this just demonic guttural scream. And the scene just ends like that. Literally, that's the end of the scene. It's pretty crazy. Of course, at this point, we're back to 6 years earlier, back to the, events that occurred at the village. As we were saying, or should I say, I forgot to mention that when they first got to the village, Ronan was not welcomed because she was not a family member. She was actually dating Dom. I think it was Dom. It was either Dom or Yuen, one of them. She was actually dating one of them, and she was actually pregnant. Like, she had just found out that she was pregnant, so she wasn't showing yet or anything. And like I said, the elders didn't want her there. They kind of tried to push her out of the village. But eventually an elder lady, an older woman came and asked to look at her hand, to look at her palm specifically. And she actually read her palm, like she looked at it, dragged her thumb across it a couple of times and then said, okay, you can stay, and literally just let her stay. Don't know if there's an ulterior motive to that. There could be, there might not be, who knows? But obviously, these three kids who are the ghost hunters, or the Ghostbusters, I should say, are there. The reason that they came back to the village wasn't to participate in that every 20-year incantation that they're going through. They wanted to go back because they remembered that in their village, there is a tunnel that no one must ever enter. And they literally call it that, the tunnel where no one must go in, something like that. It had a really silly name. And they're trying so hard to, get away from the crowd so that they can go and check it out. But obviously, anytime they mention it to any of the elders, or even this one creepy little girl who's missing an ear in the village for some reason, even she is like, oh, no, we don't go there. We don't go to that tunnel. So, everybody in the village is very aware that we don't go to that tunnel. Yet here's these three city slickers coming in and saying, well, we got to get footage for our YouTube channel. This is what I'm talking about, folks, how this movie feels American, and how these three kids just make the stupid decisions that all Americans do. Because especially coming from a Taiwanese background, you would think that the supernatural is something that they would respect more than your average American teenager. But now these three don't have any respect for the legend of the Mother Buddha or the village, the elders, everything else. And what ends up happening is, of course, they get into the tunnel. They end up getting into a little bit of trouble because Ronan was kind of eavesdropping on rituals that she wasn't supposed to lay eyes on, that were for family members only. And basically our three kids run away, and they end up finding the tunnel. They end up finding the entrance to the tunnel. It's very plainly, labeled. They end up going into the tunnel, of course, and well, before they even go into the tunnel, they break down the door the gate in front of the tunnel that's, blocking people from going in. And literally, as soon as they break the door down, you start hearing screaming coming from the tunnel. You start hearing faint female screams coming from the tunnel. And what do? They go right in, because that's exactly what an American would do. I hear screaming voices in that tunnel. Let's go in. And that's what they do. Ronan ends up staying outside of the tunnel. She doesn't really, she's a little bit too terrified. The two guys go into the tunnel, and we don't actually see what happens in the tunnel at this point. But what we do see is that Yuen comes running out of the tunnel, and he's just screaming, "Don't ask, don't ask." I'm not sure who he's talking to or what question he's answering, but that was basically all he says the rest of the movie. Don't ask, don't ask, which is very off-putting, kind of creepy, but at the same time kind of silly when there's no context to it. And then we see a scene where we see the village elders pulling Dom's dead body out from the tunnel. And as I mentioned earlier, guys, Dom was, of course, Ronan's boyfriend. She is pregnant with his child. So obviously a very traumatic event. But we don't end up seeing what happens in the tunnel because the police, after they recover the camera, say that the footage is completely damaged. It's not playable. It's completely not playable. So where are we here at this point? We might be going back to the present day at this point, where now
I think there's a curse involved if you haven't touched upon that yet.
There's some kind of curse, like I said. I think at this point in the film, I actually forgot to mention the orphanage guy. There's a gentleman in the movie. I think his name is Ming. He basically runs an orphanage. He runs the orphanage where Dodo was staying at for the past few years. And this guy is actually a good guy. Like, you can tell that he actually cares about the kids. He cares about finding them forever homes, permanent parents. And he was ecstatic when Ronan came back into the picture and came back to claim her. He actually made the comment that he actually says in so many words that he loved Dodo and that she called him dad. And he said, that made Dodo very special to me. So, I want to continue monitoring her progress, and I want to make sure that Ronan has everything she needs and blah, blah, blah. So he turns into like a helpful force throughout the film. But at this point in the film, after we get the first little bit of what happened 6 years ago, our friend Ming, the orphanage guy, basically discovers that there is a monk who can read the ancient runes that are written throughout different parts of like carvings throughout the village that they took pictures of, different prayers that are written on parchment paper, and even some like publications, like some books maybe. It's an ancient form of language that very few people speak today, but he is able to find a monk that gives him basically the answers that he's looking for. And this is where we start to realize, I think we've already started to realize there's something wrong with this village, obviously. But what we find out is that the incantation, what the monk tells us, is that the incantation that all these people have been, spouting out throughout the movie is not a blessing. Everyone assumed it was a blessing. It is not a blessing. What the actual translation of the incantation is I share my curse with you. Because if you watch the people, the cult members or the village members in the movie, they have their hands in a certain position. Usually, Buddhists, when they have their hands up in a position in front of them, the palms will be facing each other, signifying inner strength and, peace and all of that stuff. But when you see the cult members, they have their hands turned backwards so that their palms are actually facing away from each other. And what that signifies is spread. Yes, my friends, they are not blessing people when they say their incantation. They are fucking cursing you. What they are basically doing, what the story of the Mother Buddha is that if you chant, if you do the chant and you get as many people as possible to say the chant, basically the curse spreads, and it spreads amongst the people who hear the chant and people who are, kind of associated, maybe not family members of the village, but people that are associated with them, kind of like Ronan. So yeah, my friends, they are not blessing you when they say that chant. They are actually spreading their curse. And don't forget, Ronan has been asking you multiple times in this film to say the chant with her. We'll revisit that here in a little bit. So after we get this realization that this cult is not about peace and love, and that they are not about blessing people, that they're about sharing the curse of the Mother Buddha, at this point, Ronan gets a video message from the orphanage guy, from Ming. Somehow he was able to clean up the video. Somehow he was able to get a digital copy of the footage, and he had a friend, I guess, clean it up for him and send him the footage back. And basically what happened was, he sends Ming sends Ronan this video message basically saying, I have the tunnel footage. I don't really want to show it to you. I think no one should ever watch this. And basically doesn't give her the footage, tells her, no, I'm not giving it to you. And then what we see, literally, we start to see Ming break down. Like, literally, he starts pulling teeth out of his mouth. It's a very slow progression, but we see like he's pulling hair out of his head, and there's something very obviously wrong. And like I said, he basically tells Ronan, I will not give you this video. And then he starts speaking very cryptically. He starts just speaking in random gibberish. And then suddenly out of nowhere, he just starts slamming his head into his keyboard while still on camera, while Ronan is still watching this video. He slams his head into the keyboard over and over and over again until finally he keels over dead. So how did the video get to Ronan? I don't know. I don't ask those questions because that's the kind of stuff that's going to make me dislike movies. But yes, somehow Ronan got the video message. She's upset. This was a pretty gnarly scene too, by the way. I thought this suicide was really cool. It's very visceral. You can't avoid it. It's right in front of the camera, so it's not like you could look away, sure, but it's not like they're definitely not editing this scene too much to try, for the benefit of people's constitution. It definitely is a very hard scene to watch because he just slams his own head into the keyboard over and over again until he's just a bloody mess. But somehow, believe it or not, as soon as Ming dies, she gets a text on her phone, and it's the fucking tunnel video. Yes, my friends, some malevolent force somewhere actually sends her the tunnel video anyway. And of course, she plays it for everyone. And she's narrating, and what we see is Dom and Yuen go into the tunnel, and what they see, the first thing that they see is a barrier that's in the shape of the insignia that we've been seeing throughout the film. It's very obviously a barrier. It's very obviously meant to keep people out or something in. And these absolute Rhodes scholars decide to just break the barrier. Mind you, there's still female screaming faintly heard throughout the tunnel, and they still decide to advance. Whatever. You're braver than I am, my friends. And basically what happens is they end up in some labyrinth where it's almost like a maze of tunnels, and eventually they get to a statue. And yes, my friends, it is the statue of the Mother Buddha. They walk up to it. The statue has not a mask, but like a cloth with an incantation written on the cloth covering the statue's face. So we never actually get to see what Mother Buddha looks like. But, it's one of those crazy, statues with like the multiple arms, and the arms are kind of disconnected. They're kind of floating next to the torso rather than actually being attached to it. It's actually a really cool design. I do like the design of the Mother Buddha statue. And basically what we see is, we see like a Yuen get attacked by something. We don't know, potentially it could have been Dom possessed, or it could have been some other force in the tunnel. He gets attacked. We see that he's spitting up teeth, and blood is coming out of his mouth. And that's when he runs out of the tunnel, basically screaming, don't ask, blah, blah, blah. But then we finally get to see what happened to Dom. And what happened to Dom is he did not run away right away when Yuen got attacked. He ended up walking closer to the Mother Buddha statue. Eventually, he just freezes in place and stares at the face of the Mother Buddha statue, and then calmly and, very purposely just walks right up to the side, to the wall of the tunnel, and does the same thing that Ming did, just starts slamming his own head into it until he falls over dead. So basically, I think at this point we kind of realize that, yeah, the Mother Buddha is basically possessing these people, forcing them to kill themselves. Who knows? Maybe she's. Actually, I'm not even going to try to speculate. You guys figure out what the Mother Buddha is trying to do herself, because I don't know what the hell she's doing. So like I said, you see that shot, and after the video ends, Ronan realizes that Dodo is missing. Dodo's gone. We don't know where the hell she is, and she's not in the house. She's not where she's supposed to be. So what does Ronan do? Once again, the intelligent characters of this movie. She goes right back to the Chen clan village. Yes. But what we see now is that 6 years later, the village is abandoned. All the houses are decrepit. It doesn't look as nice and colorful as it did 6 years earlier. So I think we can make the assumption that the villagers probably left because the 3 idiot kids released the Mother Buddha. They probably just booked that out of there and just decided, nope, we're not living next to her home if she's going to have free reign to come in and out of that tunnel anytime she wants. So, but we see Ronan approach the tunnel. We see her go into the tunnel, and we finally she gets to the Mother Buddha statue just like the 2 guys did. We hear the same voices, like the incantation being spoken by a mysterious voice. But it's not affecting her the way it affected Dom. She probably because she has so much more conviction, because she's actually looking for her daughter. She's not affected by the voice right away. What she ends up doing is walking up, like going right up to the Mother Buddha statue and pulling the cloth off of the front, off the face, the headpiece of the Mother Buddha statue. But what do we see behind the cloth, my friends? Not a face. We see a tunnel, a fleshy tunnel. And they meant, because earlier in the movie, they mentioned when you give your name to the Mother Buddha, that's where the name is going. It's going into that tunnel that is her face. I mean, literally, her face is basically a fleshy, like, wormhole.
Fleshy chanting tunnel.
Yeah, a fleshy chanting tunnel. Let's go with that. And then as soon as Ronan takes the cloth off and sees what's behind the cloth, then she succumbs to the curse. And we see her bend down on the ground, start slamming her head into the concrete. And that's it. Film is over. Oh, man. I do like the movie. I think I like the movie more now than when the show started, because I do like a lot of what's going on here. I'm sorry, folks. There is one more scene left after Ronan kills herself. It is a posthumous scene where she's still narrating, even narrating from beyond the grave, apparently. And she's narrating how Dodo is probably safe now. Basically, we see that... basically, the film ends with footage of Dodo, and we see that she's healthy, she's happy, she's playing. She's back at the orphanage, but at least she's happy and she's playing. And what we hear, the narration of Ronan, is she's basically implying that the burden of her curse has been shared with everyone who watched the film. Yes, my friends. This film, there is a reason the film is found footage. She needed to share this curse with as many people as possible. Hence why I brought up Blumhouse's Truth or Dare, because that was kind of the same thing there. That's how they beat the Truth or Dare game. They put it on the internet and spread it so far away from themselves that they're not concerned about, their own safety anymore. So yeah, basically Ronan is creating this video under the guise of creating a video diary for Dodo's return to her house. But what it actually turns out is she's just trying to spread the curse to all of us who've just watched the movie. And now we are all cursed as basically a result. I kind of like that. I thought that's kind of a cool little element.
It kind of, now I remember what movie I was going to say a reference that actually wasn't found footage. It kind of reminded me of the plot towards the end of the Ring, or at least the American remake, when what is it? What's her name? Naomi Watts. She figures out, I got to get everybody, as many people as possible, to see this, because then it keeps the curse off of us. So she dubs it on a tape and like puts it in a random video store. So that way so many people will watch it that the curse is busy and occupied. So it kind of made me think of that.
No, that's valid. Absolutely, definitely, just as clever. You know, you can't beat the curse, so spread it around. Why the hell not?
I thought that was an interesting thing about how the power of the curse is diluted the more people see it. So like everyone might get like a little scare, but if enough people are a part of it, then it weakens it severely. I was kind of confused. Well, because I understood, obviously, because the subtitles spelled it out plainly that they accidentally did a curse instead of a blessing. The only thing that I wasn't sure, the takeaway from that was like, were they just idiots and cited the wrong thing, or was there something that like tricked them into doing a curse instead of a blessing? I wasn't 100% sure on that, if they just screwed up and like cited the wrong thing.
I think it's because they went into the tunnel against the code of the village. I think the whole thing is that it's supposed to be a blessing if you obey the instructions, but because you went against the instructions, it turned into a curse. I think that's the way it works.
I could go with that. Yeah, I like that.
That makes enough sense.
You figure the villagers have been there for as long as they have, following the instructions, and they seem fine with it. It's just once, Dom and Yoon decide to enter it, and everything goes to shit after that. I think it's because they turned it into a curse by ignoring the instructions. If you follow the instructions, I think you're fine because they've lived there with it as long as they have. And, they put it in there to begin with, and they set the incantations out to prevent it from spreading. But then once they went ahead and they went against the wishes of the incantation, then it turned into a curse.
Mm-hmm. Go ahead.
I was going to say, I think that's the way it works. I mean, again, the subtitles could be off, but I think that was the way I read it.
Yeah, I mean, it's up to interpretation. I don't think anybody's going to be completely off. I did forget to mention one thing that I did like about the final scene, aside from the whole spreading of the curse thing. There's actually a line in that final video that she makes where she's actually talking to Dodo, and she actually tells Dodo, "Forget your name. Don't remember your name. Don't remember my name." And the reason that she says that is because at one point in the movie, someone does mention that Dodo's name was given to the Mother Buddha in the ritual, even though Dodo was never there. Somehow Dodo's name got into the big pot of names. So the fact that she's telling her daughter, forget your name, change your name, I think that's just, great advice. Like, without having to actually tell her every single thing that happened. I mean, depending on how much of that video Dodo ends up watching as an adult, I like that a lot. It's a nice warning, but without letting her know that she's in danger. Just forget your name and forget me. I like that.
Yeah, I like it too. I mean, it seems like at this point she's acknowledging that, like, even though she loved her and wanted her back and wanted to be her mom, like the best course from here on out is get her away from this as possible. And I really have no choice but to end this.
Yep. No, but yeah, like I said, I'm liking it more and more the more I think about it. There's little subtle touches that I wasn't thinking about after I finished watching it that are coming to the surface now that I really got to give it credit for. So yeah, let's say my review went up a little bit since the general thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's also a case of, every year we get like a handful of these kind of like curse movies where, sure, for some reason there's a curse on the main character. They're trying to figure out what kind of curse has been put on them, why, how to dispel it, and then whatever conclusion happens. So it's like you build up such a big roster of them that they start getting compared to each other, and like we've had some really good ones in the past couple of years. So there's like a lot that the bar is set high. I'll just put it like that.
Yep, definitely.
Okay, well, if that's pretty much it for Incantation, then well, I guess really quick, obviously our next episode should be Nope. I mean, I don't see why it wouldn't be. It does release this coming up Friday. And
I mean, it's the one we kind of scheduled the month around, so.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's what we scheduled the month around for, so I'm pretty sure, bearing internet issues or World War III, I think that's the next one.
Yeah, pretty much. So yeah, but before we get out of here, let's figure out where everyone can be heard. So Venom, what do you have that's new coming out?
All right. We just finished recording Creature Comforts, episode 11. I'm still in the process of editing that. That will definitely be out before the end of this week. I would imagine as you hear this episode, it'll only be a day or two away from being released. We looked at our first brand new movie. We went ahead and reviewed Phil Tippett's Mad God, the recent release on Shudder. And, you know, the film obviously is being advertised as 30 years in the making. And was it worth the wait? Well, you'll have to listen to the episode to find out. But like I said, that should be out in mere days. Unfortunately, the main show, No More Room in Hell, was postponed due to, you know, circumstances. Let's just say that. And but we'll still be recording. Hopefully, if all goes as planned, we'll still be recording episode 47 this weekend, which will be Mike's picks, which are The House on Haunted Hill, 1959, and The Haunting, 1963. All originals all the time. No remakes. I love it.
At least not yet. I mean, I'm sure eventually we'll touch on remakes, but
I'm going to be sick that day.
I just feel like at this point, there's no reason for it until we're like so many episodes in that we are reaching for them for some reason. Why even do it?
So yeah, and that's it for me, man. No guest spots. It's been pretty slow lately. My wife's birthday was over the last week, so I tend to go overboard and spend way too much time and money on her. But you know, that's just the kind of guy I am. So
cool. All right, Dawn, what do you got?
As mentioned, Creature Comforts episode 11. Look for that one soon-ish. Latest episode of the Horror Countdown. I had a podcasting friend of mine, Raul Rivera, join me to look at post-2000 slasher films. So be on the lookout for stuff like Behind the Mask, Hatchet, let's see, Final Girls, I think came up, Happy Death Day, things of that nature. So, that was a pretty fun time. That was another, I think, hour 45-ish episode. The one before was the Killer Cult one was also like a near 2 hours. So this was another fun time. We had a lot to talk back and forth with our films. So that's the latest episode. Pretty sure there's something else coming up, but I think we have to coordinate dates. I think everything is just in the planning stages, so I can't say much, but hopefully that comes to pass sooner or later. I'm just kind of in the middle of everything because Fantasia Festival is it started on Friday, I think. Friday or Saturday, I can't remember. So I'm kind of in the rush with all that. And the guest spot is also kind of up in the air with everything going on there. So I can't say much more other than that. But hopefully sooner or later that'll come to pass. But as of now, Creature Comforts and latest episode of Horror Countdown.
Cool. As far as I go, Venom already mentioned No More Room in Hell got postponed. Hopefully that is only getting pushed to 1 week to this coming up weekend, and we'll get that out. And the only other thing from me is the premiere episode of Watch This Movie, Mike, is a new sidecast I'm doing where it's just me and a different guest every episode. First episode is out with Doug Tilley, where the movie he chose to bring was The Life and Death of Colonel Blimp. If you haven't heard of it, I'm not surprised because I hadn't heard of it. It's a movie from the 1940s, a British war drama romance movie.
Doug Tilley would bring that movie to the table.
The thing I like about Doug is like you can give him any theme in the world and he can manage to bring something that's usually a really good movie, but at the same time, like you've either never heard of it or you just never seen it.
Yep.
So, but I like it because he doesn't pick obscure just for the sake of obscure. It's like, oh, people haven't seen this, but they should. It's like those type of movies. So that was the first episode of that. I do have episode 2 scheduled, and I've kind of sent out some feelers for the third episode. So if everything goes great, I should have like a handful of those coming. I'm not trying to go too crazy with it too soon because I don't want to set up like this expectation like, oh, there's a new one every week, and then I have to like go like a month without doing it. So, and it is like on my priority list of shows, it is like currently like the lowest just because it's like a definite side cast, not like any main show. But yeah, if that sounds interesting to anybody, it is on the Dark Discussions Network with everything else. It is also up on the YouTube channel No More Room in Hell, so you can search it that way as well. And like we already mentioned, Jordan Peele's Nope is up next. So that should be fun to discuss regardless. I mean, it's a Jordan Peele movie, so there's very likely going to be a lot to talk about regardless of how much we like or don't like the movie. So I'm pretty excited for that. But with that said, I think that's going to do it. So listeners, thanks again for tuning in. And we will catch you in 1 week's time. Let's say bye to the listeners.
Later.
How's the curse I cursed you with, Kirsty?
Listeners, it's a curse, not a blessing. Be careful.